For business owners and corporate leaders, what would you say are the most critical angles to consider when considering offshore investments?
Focus on your local market and build your business to a level that you're financially strong, then start focusing on foreign markets. The markets were large, other than Maldives being a small market. India and Bangladesh were much larger markets than Sri Lanka. So trying to target the whole market at once was maybe not the right decision. So obviously the fact that the proximity, the culture, the demand for a product that you want to introduce is extremely important.
Let's talk in terms of especially research and development, manufacturing, the export potentials.
So there is a lot of opportunity, I believe, in Bangladesh. We are also looking at Africa very, very seriously because Africa is a market that needs investment to come in. Looking at different industries, say in the manufacturing concern, or say for example, there's a lot of Sri Lankan companies who have gone into power in Africa and they're doing very, very well. Even the political situation is quite relaxed. You can reach the hierarchy in politics very, very easily. They feel that you're bringing in a good opportunity there. They open their doors and they make approval processes very, very easy. So that is our focus at the moment as far as our expansion is concerned, because these are developed markets. They understand good product. When you have an established #1 brand in the world, you might as well, if you can acquire a company like that, it's really, really easy to get into the market and sort of exploit that market, as it were.
The climate surrounding offshore investments is a vital aspect in the country's economy. We spoke about all this and more with Aelian Gunawardene. Stay tuned.
For 30 years, LMD has been the voice of business in Sri Lanka, capturing the pulse of the nation's corporate landscape through its iconic covers. Each cover tells a story, from the first edition in 1994 to the present day, narrating key moments, leaders and trends that have shaped Sri Lanka's business ecosystem. Over the years, LMD covers have featured thought leaders, business pioneers and game-changing innovations, reflecting the evolution of industries and the economy. As we celebrate 30 years, these covers represent more than just publications. They are a testament to LMD's legacy of excellence in business journalism and its unwavering commitment to being Sri Lanka's leading voice of business. LMD, Sri Lanka's voice of business, a legacy of 30 years.
Hello and welcome to LMDtv. The topic of conversation today is the climate surrounding offshore investments. And I'm here with founder and managing director of JAT Holdings, Aelian Gunawardene. Thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you for having me.
So, kicking off our first round of questions, for business owners and corporate leaders, what would you say are the most critical angles to consider when considering offshore investments?
Firstly, I believe you need to make sure that you've exhausted the local market. I would think that you would focus on your local market and build your business to a level that you're financially strong in order to then start focusing on foreign markets. But once you have made that decision or achieved that sense of growth, then it's a matter of looking at the convenience of getting into a market. Say from Sri Lanka, we've found that at JET, we found that Bangladesh was a convenient market to get into. India was a convenient market, mainly due to the proximity, and of course Maldives was a no-brainer almost. So those three markets were the three markets we looked at initially because of proximity, because the cultures sort of were similar, and the markets were large, other than Maldives being a small market. India and Bangladesh was much larger markets than Sri Lanka. So getting into understanding the size of the market, understanding whether that market has a demand for that kind of product is very, very important. I'll give you a personal story with Bangladesh. When I personally went in about 22 years ago, in the wood coating market, there was no spray gun. there wasn't anybody using wood coatings the way we know it. They were just using a wet and polish 8 coats of it. So you can look at it in the form that, okay, there is no market, or you can look at it whether there is a huge market to convert that market. And that's what we were able to do, or that's the challenge we took, and we were able to do it very, very successfully. Uh, India, on the other hand, had more knowledge of wood coatings, but it was a massive sort of market. It was a huge operation to get into the Indian market, and we really had a equally good setup. But then we found that maybe trying to target the whole market at once was maybe not the right decision. So when you're looking at very, very big markets like that, looking at smaller sections of it, maybe we should have, in hindsight, started with Bangalore or Chennai or something like that. So obviously the fact that the proximity, the culture, the demand for a product that you want to introduce is extremely important.
Which countries are looking most promising at the moment in terms of offshore investments, especially for Sri Lankan businesses that are looking forward to setting up shop elsewhere?
Yes.
Let's talk in terms of especially research and development, manufacturing, the export potentials.
Yeah. I believe still now that Bangladesh has peace now, and a new government set in just last month, I think. Yeah, last month they came into power. So there is a lot of opportunity, I believe, in Bangladesh. But for us, we are also looking at Africa very, very seriously, because Africa is a market that needs investment to come in. And again, a market that is ex, accepts Sri Lankan companies, very, very with open arms, as it were. Uh, we are looking at, we are already in Kenya, so we're looking at different parts of Africa. But when you're looking at different industries, say in the manufacturing concern, or say, for example, there's a lot of Sri Lankan companies who have gone into power in Africa, and they're doing very, very well. I was at a meeting yesterday with some business owners from Nigeria, and they were talking about setting up power as well again in Nigeria, because Nigeria power is a big issue, and they have a lot of gas. So if they have gas and you're willing to come in and do gas generated power, supply even 200, 300 megawatt, there is a lot of opportunity. And those markets somehow, even even the political situation is quite relaxed. You can reach the hierarchy of in politics very, very easily. They feel that you're bringing in a good opportunity. They open their doors, and they make approval processes very, very easy. So Africa is certainly a continent that we're looking at very seriously, and obviously, because we're in this area, we're looking at Vietnam, because in the furniture industry, Vietnam is maybe arguably the biggest furniture producing country in the world. Our research shows that they consume about $580 million worth of wood coatings alone. So setting up in Vietnam is very, very important for us, and then Malaysia and this part of the world as well. But as you might have heard, we bought a 90-year-old brand in New Zealand and Australia. So that is our focus at the moment as far as our expansion is concerned, because these are developed markets. They understand good product. When you have an established number one brand in the world, you might as well, if you can acquire a company like that, it's really, really easy to get into the market and sort of exploit that market, as it were.
What is your assessment of the most significant opportunities and threats available to companies outside the shores of Sri Lanka?
Okay,
Let's talk about with Judd setting up office elsewhere also. What were the threats and what were the main opportunities?
yeah. So one of the opportunities obviously is the fact that we might have a product that is not in that market. So in Africa, when we went in to Kenya to start with, and Ghana and so on, they had no water-based coatings for wood, and we are the masters in it. So there is a huge opportunity. Like I said, in the power sector, they had a huge dearth of power, whether it be wind, solar or hydro. And now, like I told you, there's a gas opportunity as well. So there's a lot of opportunity. The threats are, of course, that the fact that there's a huge distance. No, Africa is a long, long way. Even if you have to fly, it's a hell of a long flight. Um, so you have to have people, in situ. So we in Kenya we have something like about I think 6 Sri Lankans already there. We have a team of about 60 running the company there. So like that, you have to have a few Sri Lankans who are based there, who speak our language, but depend on some of the local labor as well. As far as a significant threat is concerned, I mean, how I see it is, you have, you know, the currency being one of the threats, because say if those currencies depreciate very strongly and you're exporting to them, the cost of product goes up significantly. Right now, where we just set up for some of our paints in Dubai, and just as we set up these issues that are having in the Middle East. So those are some of the threats that could come up with the Middle East, instability in the Middle East and so on. But other than that, I personally believe those markets are a lot more stable than ours.
Geopolitical instability, you just mentioned the issue in the Middle East as well, is a significant threat around the world. So, how does this influence offshore investments, especially looking from a business perspective? I know you covered that a bit in what you mentioned before as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what do? You got to today start preparing that, oil doesn't only affect the price of petrol for your car, right? It affects transport of all goods. It affects, the fact that everything, I think, from insurance to the freight to producing particularly paint, because we use a lot of solvent, and solvent needs is produced out of oil. So all these things could go up in price. So you got to obviously be aware of geopolitical um, impacts, but you can't necessarily sort of lay back and say, okay, there are all these threats, so let us not sort of invest or expand. uh, everything in life, as we know, has a cycle, and it's in times like this that you might actually be conscious about what sort of industry you should be getting into that can can maybe shield itself against such risks, particularly against risks which are dependent on oil. So the service industry obviously it's another good place to be in. Uh, Gold obviously is a fantastic, so if you're in Ghana or in Nigeria or something and getting into gold, mining, that's fantastic. So in Sri Lanka, we're getting into mining on the east coast, doing heavy minerals. And similarly, if you're in the mining industry in that part of the world, it's generally shielded against a lot of these geopolitical risks that can occur.
It's time now to take a very short break, but we'll be back for further discussion on offshore investments.
Display your brand message on digital screens at prime locations. The largest digital advertising network in Sri Lanka. Emerging Media.
Welcome back to the show. We are in conversation with the founder and managing director of JAT Holdings, Aelian Gunawardene. From your experience as a Sri Lankan business owner, how do principles such as corporate governance play out when considering investment on foreign soil? Or does that even play a role?
It does actually. I'll give you an example with Bangladesh. Now, the fact that we are listed in Sri Lanka and everything we do has to be within those corporate governance frameworks. A lot of the companies there don't follow too much of governance, So following, a stringent corporate governance framework can be a negative. Obviously, you're already at a disadvantage. But the fact that your banks in those countries would recognize you and respect you for that, even the political environment respects you for being a good corporate citizen. So it has its pluses and minuses. It costs you much more to be a good corporate citizen, but on the long term, you don't need to be looking over your shoulder, as it were, and you can only grow from strength to strength. You can't be. I believe any business can't set itself up to start using loopholes in the system in order to be a successful business. And you got to, I always say, pay your taxes with a smile. You got to be happy about it and hope that it will be invested in the right fields or in the right manner, and then go about planning and budgeting your business accordingly.
And our final question, what is your message to local businesses that are looking to set up investments overseas?
Again, like I said, it's about seeing whether there is a need in the kind of product that you're doing. So that is very, very important. Of course, the most important thing is how do you get your money across, right? Our central bank is quite stringent in how much of money we can send across. There is opportunity today in the Maldives for in the tourism industry, but you get a island, you want to build a resort, it'll cost you 70-80 million dollars. How do you get some money across? So those are some of the challenges you face. uh, I know the central bank has got more and more lenient as in the last few years, but if you can find a way to get your money across legally, that's what is the biggest challenge. But if you identify a market that has potential, I mean, getting funding even in those countries is not too difficult. And we have excellent offshore banking facility with a lot of our top commercial banks, whether they be HMB or commercial or DFCC or any of them, Sampat and so on. So that getting funds out and getting investments out there is a challenge, but it is a challenge that you can overcome. Um, as long as you're willing to, my constant thing is, if you're willing to put in the hard work, you cannot be running a foreign investment where you're sitting here and try to manage it with a few people. A lot of guys who have been really successful have gone and spent time in these countries. In Bangladesh, I used to be there at least once a month. Of course, now the business is established and it's running well. We have a country head there and a team of about 70-80 people. So it runs well. In spite of that, my CEO from here, my technical directors, all of them visit the country very, very often. And so constant touch in these markets, showing them that you're supporting them from head office. That's very, very important. But as long as you have a good business plan, a good product that you can sell, whether it's a product or service, actually, ideally a service today. We have an IT company. We just won a massive contract in Africa, and it's just a service-oriented business. So you don't need to depend on people. You don't need to depend on oil or anything else. So you get a few $1 million contract just on having a good service product. So if you have that, I think expanding into any foreign market is very, very easy. But if you look at the furniture industry, I keep telling our furniture manufacturers here, because I don't think even one guy has got a good export market for furniture. Where they're content supplying the Sri Lankan market. It's a decent sized market, but we all know it's a small market. But if they want to set up out, or Damro has gone and set up in India, and they're doing very, very well there. So accordingly, if somebody wants to set up in some of these countries, you want to, of course, you want to embrace technology. You can't be depending on solely on human labor, because even in a country like Bangladesh today, companies are really going into technology uh, because of consistency of supply, quality, and the non-dependency of people, taking sick leave and whatever not. So if you're willing to have all those aspects covered in your business plan, setting up out of the country is very important for any Sri Lankan company, because this is such a small market, right?
We've been in conversation with the founder and managing director of Jet Holdings, Aelian Gunawardene. Thank you, and it was great listening to you and your insights on the topic of discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you for having me, and all the best.
And thank you to all our viewers for joining us as well. Until next time, take care.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram and X. Thank you for watching and stay safe.